The semifinals have begun. It is Zoc versus Tourney Bar and Whiteheart versus Ajax. These are best out of threes, as has been the rest of the tournament. I'm going to pick one example game from each of these guys, and then once we move into the finals, I'm going to cast all three games so that we can see all of the glory determining the winner of the Legend of the Stars. The map is not Rieger 4, Rieger 6, Brink cannot Roman numeral. Rieger 6 Highlands. On the north side, we've got Tourney Bar as Cybran going land first, and Zoc also Cybran land first on the south. 2100 rated player versus 2000. Both of these guys top tier 1 versus 1 players. Should be a really good game. So Zoc is going to be going for all 4 mass extractors. The land factory gets double adjacency from those 2 mass extractors. Then we've got a lab out followed by a mole. Early aggression for the win. Then we've got the engineer starting the hydro, 3 power generators, I think. No, 2 power generators, second land factory, 2 more power generators, and third air. You're going to want a lot of land on this map, and we'll talk about the map in just a second in more detail. Tourney Bar going for maximum adjacency potential. We've got same build to start as Zoc did. Only 1 power generator instead of 2, rolling into a second land factory, 3 power generators, air factory. So the same amount of P-gens, just the ordering is slightly different. And then we've got 2 more land factories queued with double adjacency on every single land factory, and then getting 3 factories adjacent to the same power generator for the optimal efficiency in his build. That is a lovely, lovely thing to see. So where is that lab going to get off to? It's headed over to the left. As you've probably already seen in past casts, Rieger 6 Highland has quite a bit of reclaim around the outside edges. You've got 2 groups, one on the north and one on the south, that are virtually identical, though they be from different factions. They are the same amount of mass. You've got these 2 groups of reclaim that offer up quite a good boost to the person who gets them. And then as the game moves forward, the typical path is for the top ACU to move right, the bottom ACU to move left. You want to grab these 3 and these 4 mass extractors, because if you control those 2 core groups, you've got a significant amount of mass at your disposal. And then you always want to build an excessive amount of land. And Zoc looks like he's not doing quite as much land to start with as Tourney is. Tourney is already halfway to his 3rd land factory. Zoc does not even have his 3rd queued yet, which could lead to significant issues maintaining map control, because this map, although it does have some choke points, is deceptive in that you need tons of land. Since the factions are Cybran, this is not going to be an important access point. Obviously, you can walk amphibious hover units through ACU engineers and whatnot, but the water will prevent the incursion of Mantis in the early game. Over on the right, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 entry points. Now, even though each of those 5 points is a narrow access, you can't guard all of them with point defense, and even if you did, your opponent would just sit back and turtle up with superior map control. So you need as many units as possible out early. Tourney raiding with an early Mantis, going to pick up an engineer kill immediately after finishing the 2nd mass extractor in the expansion. Those will be killed off, and that's going to give Tourney a nice little leg up in his eco. Looks like the lab did move over to the left for Zoc. That was intended for this engineer, which is picking up the mass extractor and building a T1 point defense over there. Just because I say you can't guard all of the entrances doesn't mean you shouldn't, because a single T1 point defense right there necessitates T1 artillery moving into the area, and it prevents run-bys from 1 or 2 Mantis at a time, kind of similar to just building a bunch of random wall sections in some places and hoping for the best. 2nd mass extractor going down. Zoc is going to lose out on that mass, putting him at 13 versus 17, I think. Yes, there it is, the adjustment after that game tick. We've got 300 power in Zoc's hands versus 220 for Tourney Bar. But as we've already seen, he is going for the maximum possible adjacency with all of his things, although he has had to pause briefly in order to recover his power. If you are running low, or that low I should say, you can go grab some tree clumps, but the trees are not as many as there are on some maps, so you're not going to be able to rely on them entirely for your early game. Torin moving out, going to grab Reclaim, a Mass Extractor, and then move his ACU into the 4. Unfortunately, the adjacency is not as epic with these Mass Extractors, but you can still get some more land factories up in a different spot and use that to your advantage. We've got the 6th land factory about to begin after 4 more power generators, which will put Torin where he needs to be power-wise. He is stalling, but your stall slows as you build more power, and I think that he will be okay. Also remember that building power and building factories takes more power than building units out of those factories. So if you stall slightly building the factory, you will be slightly positive once you complete it, and that is where a lot of people, including me, mess up, because I always overbuild power in the early game, assuming that I need it because I'm negative. But then I finish all of my factory builds and I'm using all my mass, and I realize that I'm 85 or 100 power to the positive, and I don't know where all of that stuff came from. Torin moving his units to guard the access point to his expansion. You don't want Mantis leaking up in there, and then he's just going to stream the rest of his units towards the front end of the base. Zoc has definitely caught up on his land production. We've got 6 factories already completed with a 7th in the works. And then he is building power generators with 1 lonely engineer, but that is going to be sufficient for his needs. Torin also ahead on eco, but only by 2 mass per tick, which is about to disappear as soon as this mass extractor dies. And Zoc is building his mass extractors out to the expansion. Did he get? Yes, he did. He got that reclaim over on the edge. It looks like, oh my goodness, Zoc is actually going for his opponent's expansion. That's going to give him 3 mass extractors and all of the reclaim up here. Torin was able to drop the plateau, but he only dropped 2 engineers and 1 artillery, whereas his opponent dropped 4 artillery, which may or may not team kill his own engineers. No, they will not, but he will lose 1 to reclaim right there. As long as those already kill that already, then this is a done deal. On the south side, we've got an edge build for a land factory on the plateau. Run by from Zoc, gonna clear the ACU. Looks like the engagement on the plateau is going to favor Torin, but he's not going to be able to respond in time, and he's going to lose all of those mass extractors. Torin decided not to reclaim his mass just yet. I would assume because of his power issues earlier, he's not going to be able to use all of that mass, and has decided to do something a little different and wait. We've got number 7 land factory on the right hand side. Zoc is still on 7 with none queued in his outside expansion, so these guys are going to be running neck and neck with the same production. However, Torin has just lost air control to Zoc, who has got about maybe 10 interceptors, and there are none for Torin, who has immediately planned some extra power and another air factory. That's going to hopefully put him back up where he can contest air control. Zoc parks all of his Mantis in the rear. Torin does have intel, so he knows that they are there and can go kill them at will with his commander. This was a bold move by Zoc that I think is going to pay off mightily in the end, because that is extra income that is not very easy to raid by his opponents. That's going to give him a 6 mass extractor advantage just in what's up on the plateau. Zoc cleaning up a couple of Mantis that managed to kill off one of his mass extractors, but he will resecure that as quickly as possible. ACU needs to start walking. If you stand still, the Mantis will run out of your reach, which they will do anyway, by the way, since they are significantly faster than the ACU. Looks like one is going to get away scot-free, which will probably run into the units from Torin. Torin faltering slightly, a bad misstep, walking his Mantis into that point defense, Not a good thing to do when you're already slightly behind on unit count, and now that his ACU is out of place, Zoc is harassing the right side, eliminating a mass extractor and just bungling up the works for Turin Bar, who has also not rebuilt his mass extractor on the far left side. Zoc is leading 43-33 in mass, not quite a 25% increase. Now we've got 3,400 reclaim versus 2,300. So Zoc just stronger overall in the earliest portions of this game. And you'll notice that while Tourney does have enough units to deny most of what is going on the right, he is behind enough in unit count that he has no units to respond to what is happening on the left, and that's going to lead to him losing yet another mass extractor. There is a Jester out for Zoc. That is awesome to see. I love that we've gotten to see T1 gunships a couple of times during this tournament. It's not often that you get to see these in team games or in the extended 1 versus 1s because their HP is so awful compared to the mass input for T2 gunships. T2 gunships are far more survivable. They last longer with their higher fuel reserves. All in all, a better investment when you're on larger maps. But when you've got a 5x5 map like Rieger 6 Highlands, Jesters are fast, they're high damage, and they can wreck a lot of things as long as you can keep them away from flak, because mobile flak, I think it's like 2 shots or maybe 3 shots and a Jester is dead. Alright, Tourney has been able to protect his expansion. He's rebuilt his mass extractor. He needs to get that mass reclaim, but now he might have overstepped with his commander. You will notice that Tourney has backed his Mantis up behind his ACU, but Zoc has run by the commander in order to get at those tanks. The idea there is that the ACU soaks damage, keeping all of your own Mantis alive as your enemy loses tanks, and that reduces the damage potential of your opponent, but your ACU sheds health while you maintain the same amount of damage with all of those tanks at your back. The 2 Jesters are going to move to the north, free to harass these mass extractors. T1 mexes go down incredibly quickly when you've got 2 Jesters on the case. Interceptors hanging close to defend those, and Tourney is going to have quite a bit of catch up to do on the air game once again. That is the disadvantage, where if you're not able to fully field the amount of interceptors that your opponent has, if you engage with 75% of the numbers, then you're likely to lose air, which sets you back to 0. But your opponent still has 80-90% of the interceptors that he started with. So air wins are kind of self-perpetuating as long as you instigate a fight or are handed a fight before your opponent reaches equivalent numbers. It's kind of the same thing with land units, but I feel like it's less exaggerated because the overall damage to health ratio is so high on air units that a handful of air units on a single good turn can knock down so many enemy air units that it makes it difficult to recover after that initial engagement. Mantis moving in for Zoc. I think we have finally hit the tipping point where Tourney is not going to be able to defend himself. He's got 2 T1 point defense, one of which is not walled in, so he definitely should be working on that. There are only 2 Medusas in this entire force, 3 Medusas that are moving towards this base. So I feel like if they run in, the point defense is probably going to put a stop to that, but they do not need to run directly into the base. Zoc does have intel. He knows where those PD are, and he will simply go around them and into the back end of the base. Tourney, sensing that most of the units are on the right side of the map, not in the center, is going to try and move up slightly, but I may be getting the impression here that he really wants to die, because otherwise you would not be pushing your commander into such an exposed position when you know you're at a unit disadvantage. Zoc has also started getting gun upgrade, which it appears is not going to stall him for either resource. Look at that management. Holy cow. 5,500 reclaim. He's on 1,200 power and pretty evenly balanced when he's in the reclaim. Obviously, he just stepped out of it. and then Tourney on 4,700 reclaim with 1,100 power. So they are kind of close apparently, but then you look at how long this mass advantage has been happening, and Zoc has to be several thousand mass ahead at this point with that 25 per tick lead. Tourney falling back once again. He sees that Rhinos have hit the field. We've got a T2 HQ online, T2 power coming up. Tourney starting the gun upgrade, which is the appropriate response to seeing T2 in the field. You can eliminate that mass quite easily with overcharges, but I don't know. Yes, no, that is a power generator. Does he have overcharge? He does not. He will probably be building it as soon as he possibly can once he gets the gun upgrade complete. However, his hold is still faltering. We've got T2 power, we've got T2 lands, but the amount of T1 on the field is still significantly higher for Zoc. We've also got 3 flak out to the front, and I don't believe that Zoc has had to build any flak whatsoever. So that's 3 flak that could have been tanks that Tourney had to build, and that's going to reduce his total damage potential once his opponent starts hitting his base. We've got units moving around the top left. Tourney does not have radar on that area, which is, I would say, a critical error, but one that I am often making, and I think that's mostly due to the units coming through here and killing off all of that. Left behind a T1 artillery to deal with engineers. That is a dirty, dirty move, preventing the rebuild of that mechs, but that is what you do when you're in a 1 versus 1. You've got to win somehow, so you do what you can. I guess anything is fair in Love and War after all. Tourney moving in on the T1 units to Zoc's left is going to fall back in the face of that gun comm. The gun comm, of course, is going to exert masterful control over the area, even in the face of 6 to 10 T2 units, as long as you have overcharge to feed it. And it looks like Tourney does, with 500 power to the positive, building another power generator to maintain. He's got 200 plus when he's biting into reclaim, so I guess he does deem that necessary. He will be able to overcharge at nearly full speed, and he has some of his own units with him. However, T1 point defense going down fast and furiously for Zoc, and Zoc is going to move his own commander into range, showing Tourney, hey yo, I've got a gun upgrade too, come at me bro, I got more tanks, I got more guns, we can do this thing. And now Tourney is going to get pincered. We've got Zoc moving in with T2 units on the rear, going to move up and try to kill off most of the units that could potentially come and reinforce a Tourney bar. Overcharge landing on a couple of T2 tanks, decreasing Tourney's resources yet further. We've got 6 T2 tanks alive versus 5 and some flak. And then now we're going to lose the forward land factory, and Zoc is free to control even more of the map. Tourney has not been able to regain control of his outside expansions. While there are point defense guarding this, we do see more units gathering, getting ready to assault the base, just kind of peeking out from behind the rock, waiting to see if they can snipe something off. Tourney retreating to the center. That's going to be... he'll be in control of a lot of reclaim. That is good for him, but I don't know that he's going to be able to get it and turn it into more units quickly enough to prevent what is coming. More T1 moving around the back. There should be some defenses in the base capable of denying that. We've seen 2 more factories go to T2 support. On the south side, we have the same 3, and then we've got a T2 airshift. So Corsairs coming into play. That is probably going to go for a direct ACU snipe. We've already got 7 on the field. Yes, here they come. About 1,000 damage per pass if the ACU is not dodging. And there are 8 spreading out to minimize the damage from the flak. Looks like they are going to go directly for the flak instead of for the ACU. And that's actually quite smart, because if you fail to kill the ACU in the first and second passes due to dodging, if there's 3 mobile flak alive, by the 3rd pass they would have killed the vast majority of the Corsairs, and you do not want that. Now Tourney is clogged in his own units, unable to dodge. He has lost his mobile flak, and I think that is going to be the end of that very brave commander. 2,000 health and falling. There's the impacts. 300 HP remaining. The next one comes in. A little bit of a sidestep there, but the last shall take the prize. Tourney Bar goes down. Well played by Zoc. Torin fought as best he could, but you can see how much good Zoc did with his consistent raiding patterns. You had this at the very beginning of the game, totally shutting down Torin's bid for the 3 mass extractors up on the hill. You had slightly superior map control, slightly superior raiding. He was able to kill these off multiple times during the game, multiple raids over to the left. And when you set your opponent back, it doesn't even have to be that much. If they're behind 500 mass, that's 10 tanks, or nearly 10 tanks, about 9 tanks. And those 9 tanks, if they're not available to guard the expansion that you just managed to rebuild, since you're behind on mass, then you're going to lose that expansion again. And Zoc was excellent in taking advantage of every single weakness that he could find in Torin's defense. Well played indeed. That is gonna wrap everything up for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a like and share it with someone. If you want to support the channel, catch the streams, or join the Discord, check out the links in the description. Thank you all for being at least partially insane, and I will see you in the next one.